History hardly ever fails to repeat itself. We've seen class warfare multiple times during recent human history, and generally that had to do with money. Class has always been defined by money and status, and when the definition of class starts to leak towards your genetics, things get ugly. Most people understand the horrors of the Holocaust, where it was spewed that Jews have all the power and are ruining Germany, so something must be done. Most people understand the injustice of pre-civil rights movement America, where Jim Crow was in effect, effectively making African Americans second-class citizens. I argue that we are witnessing the fruition of one of those types of mentalities. A very totalitarian type mentality, where the working class are defined as women and minorities, and the aristocracy are defined as straight white males. There's something interesting in the general attitude of the American people, where it seems like any injustice towards any race is intolerable, unless directed at straight white men. My theory on this is that generally the people during the civil rights era who were complaining that black people becoming citizens on par with white people was an injustice against the white man were racists. This is obviously a ridiculous sentiment. Everyone deserves equal citizenship with one another who are in fact citizens of their respective countries. This new mentality would generally be something we could ignore or just flat out make fun of, but they have been slowly gaining power in Western countries. Now I live by the moral precept that you should judge people based on the content of their character and not by the color of their skin. If you do hold to that position, then the people we're going to discuss would be your opponents. They are absolutely for judging people based on the color of their skin and what sex they are. I understand that BuzzFeed is something that people generally like to avoid, and trust me, I'm one of them. But this article is a shining example of how attitudes are shifting into Nazi-esque territory. Now, it'd be easy to just shout Godwin's Law at me and call it a day, but hear me out. Look at these people's words as we go through them, and just think back to the justifications used by Nazi Germany in order to persecute the Jewish population. Do I think that this will happen to straight white males? No. I'm no paranoid conspiracy theorist, but the attitude for such a dictatorial system is ripe within the authoritarian left. The authoritarian left is now the left. Classic liberalism has gone to the wolves, and those who hold to some principles that the left used to support are now left without representation. This article is titled 23 Writers with Messages for Straight White Male Publishing, because I guess straight black male publishing, gay white male publishing, or straight white female publishing already got the message. Even the title is outright racist and aggressive. They put straight white males in a box as if we're some type of cloned copy of one another with the same opinions, values, goals, aspirations, and hardships. Wait, forget hardships. I forgot that straight white males are the oppressors, not the oppressed. My mistake. This list was created by Isaac Fitzgerald, who is a member of the BuzzFeed staff. Yes, this isn't just one of their random lists made by some random person. This is a member of a racist and sexist publication's staff, making a list denigrating one race and sex. The racism that is on display here is different than your classic white supremacist. While white supremacists believe that white people are the greatest race ever, and everyone should kneel before the awesome might of the white man, these racists are racist only against one race, white people. They are just as backwards in their thinking as white supremacists, but they don't think white people are the best race, they think white people are the worst race. White people are inherently bad to these people simply for being born that way. Now, I'm not sure whether Isaac Fitzgerald is a gay white man or a straight white man. Maybe he has some victim cred going for him, but his masochism is definitely on display. It starts with how they created the list. Quote, "We asked attendees at the Annual Association of Writers and Writing Programs conference if they had any messages for the predominantly white publishing industry. Here are their answers." Now you'll notice what they did here already. They started the article saying, "Hey, listen up, straight white male publishing, we've got a message for you," and then switched it to predominantly white. Why did they do that? Well, probably because the link brings us to a survey that concludes 74% of the publishing workforce is female. Whoopsie! In the article they sent us to, they try to allude to some sort of wage gap between men and women, but then admit that on average men have about 8 more years of experience than women do in the field. So there goes that argument. We already see the spin. Back to the list. So the first response to someone asking if they had any messages for the white publishing industry is, quote, "Diversity is not publishing the one story, it's publishing multiple stories from people of diverse backgrounds. It makes me wonder if this person knows that there's more than one book in circulation. This woman obviously is treating white people as some kind of hive mind. White people have written everything from science fiction to crime thrillers to memoirs to biographies to historical fiction, and on it goes. But in this person's mind, those are all the same story because it comes from a white brain and white fingers. This just shows that no matter how good someone's story is, no matter how incredible the book may be, it's just another white story. This woman is valuing a story based on the skin color of the author and not by the quality of the story in question. There is a diversity in story. But people with the mindset of this woman think white people think this way, black people think that way, Asian people think a different way, and Hispanic people think another way entirely. We are all hive minds within our respective races, except if we look at me versus Isaac Fitzgerald, we can see that people with the same skin color can actually disagree on something. Crazy concept, I know. And then we have people who just come out with it, who just lay their bigotry on the table and say, what do you have to say about that? Well, I have this to say about it. It's obvious from this, that you are not in support of non-white authors. That is not your motivation. You aren't writing, read more authors of color, you didn't write authors of color deserve a voice or some crap like that. You wrote, read less straight white men. You are anti-straight white male. You aren't pro-authors of color. What would you think of someone saying something like this about any other race or minority whatsoever? Read less black people, read less gay people, read less Asian authors. I would think they were bigots. That's what I would think. Also, I don't know why you're sending the publishing industry this message. It would seem like you're addressing readers of books, but let's move on. Listen. Okay, thanks. Also, your t-shirt says, I am not a token. Well, of course you aren't. I see 6 women in this picture at first glance, not including you. You'll notice how these people deem themselves oppressed, even though we've shown that white women make up 74% of the publishing industry. We owe you nothing. Hey, Rachel, weren't you supposed to hand in your manuscript at the end of May? We owe you nothing! Okay, then we can't publish your book. I'm sorry. Oh my God, why don't you listen to female authors? Sit down and let us abolish you. That's right, white people. Based solely on your race, you are being told to sit down, shut your fucking mouth, and let them abolish you. What does abolish mean again? Oh yeah, formally put an end to. You know, some synonyms include destroy, exterminate, eliminate, annihilate, wipe out, and obliterate. How does that make you feel? How can white people sit well with attitudes like this? Why are these not seen as equal to the racism and sentiments shown in Nazi Germany? How is this not seen as someone trying to relegate white people to the back of the bus? I'm not going to go through the rest of this article because it's just as stupid, and I'm sure none of you want to hear me read and expound upon things like, ain't nobody got time for that, and chill. So what is all of this based on? Where are these racist and sexist sentiments derived from? Privilege. The idea that there is subtle institutionalized racism, sexism, and homophobia, and that straight white men benefit from that. Of course, we have that subtle influence argument again, just like we have with the patriarchy theory in their lackluster upholding of gender norms. Of course, when you display actual institutionalized racism and sexism, like affirmative action programs and quotas based on race and sex, you're told that those are only in place because of the inherent privilege you have. Of course, when you ask where exactly are these institutionalized instances of privilege that you benefit from, you aren't given examples of them. You're told that, well, straight white men have power because, you know, homeless straight white dudes totally benefit from having someone of their demographic running things. And people who have privilege are generally blind to their privilege unless they accept our concept at face value. We also have another case of people starting with their conclusion here. They hoard all evidence that could possibly prove their hypothesis and then discard all evidence against it. I remember having a conversation with a feminist who was making the case for voting on politicians based on their demographics. I asked this feminist, isn't that what not being a racist and sexist is all about? Not taking demographics into account. And then I was actually given the answer, well, yes and no. These people are of the mind that you can judge people based on the color of their skin and not the content of their character, or both. They are reversing all progress that was actually made in the civil rights era. What mattered was your actions and your character, not the amount of melanin you had in your skin, or where your parents came from, or anything like that. But those who follow this ideology are of the mind that straight white males are inherently privileged, and because they are privileged, they have to be punished for that. You were born the wrong way, and so unless you acknowledge that you yourself was born the wrong way, then our problems can never be solved. They are nurturing masochism. Because you are privileged, we need to strip you of your rights, your status, your job, your equality of opportunity, and anything else we can get our grubby little hands on. Do you want to know the funniest thing about all this? If they were to get exactly what they wanted, and straight white men were relegated to the back of the bus, straight white men were barred from holding certain positions of power, or straight white men had to work harder than other demographics to get ahead, they'd declare this a victory. But this is where the mental race war is heading. These people are of the mind that you were born incorrectly, and so we need to rectify that in some way. They don't care what it is, as long as straight white men as a whole are brought down, then they will be happy. They don't care so much about raising themselves up, in their theory, but bringing others down. This is why I am of the mind that they are a racist movement. They simply can't recognize a level playing field when they see one, because if they don't succeed, they will blame it on the straight white man keeping them down, as opposed to their own personal failings. These people have an external locus of control, and no blame can befall them. Those who tout this attitude around are far more anti-straight white male than pro anything else.